lot of guys are going to say, oh, I'm interested in long-term relationship, and they're not. So women have been burned by that. So you have to understand the pain points of your market. You don't want to write a check you can't cash.
But what are some of the common mistakes that you see that men make when it comes to creating their dating profile?
I'll go with 3 low bars and make you from mediocre to a good profile. One is to avoid selfies because they distort your face. It makes your nose 30% bigger. The second is you'll have a much better experience. You'll have more women come to you.
Is there a way to emotionally connect with the sort of women that we're wanting to meet? Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers, and today we're going to be talking about dating profiles. The wonderful James Newberry is an expert in this area. He's written a book about this as well, which you can find in the link in the show notes. And we really get into dating profiles, right? And I think this is a struggle for a lot of men. Creating dating profiles that actually lead to women wanting to talk to them. You know, we talk about profile, we talk about the profile, we talk about the pictures, we talk about what you need to write, talk about how to embed humor and authenticity. We talk about this science of attractive photos as well, understanding how dating works in general, right? And crafting a compelling story. That's really important parts that we talk about. But I think that this is a huge thing I see with the clients that come to me, men that come to me that I help with their dating as a holistic piece, is that this piece around how to sell yourself, how to talk about yourself in a way that puts you in a good light while being honest about who you are without lying. So this is a perfect episode for you. And before we just jump into that, I'm going to let you know that I'm creating a community of men. As many of you know, I know not a lot of you listeners, I've spoken to you through Instagram or email, and some of you have been to my events. That one of the things we struggle with as men is when we start to do this work of self-development, of improving ourselves, is it's hard to find other men, like-minded men. So I'm going to start a community. It's going to be starting in January. The doors will start opening for registration this month in November 2024. And it's going to be a long-term thing. So it's a commitment's going to be like 6 months or so, right? Because it's really for men who are really committed to doing this work. Not just guys who want to like dip in and get tactics. This is men who want to really create bonds and brotherhood together. I haven't got a name for it yet, but it's really going to be something that supports men in their ongoing growth, to get feedback from each other, to support each other, to hold each other accountable to what's important. And most important, I think, is the feedback. Because you know, like with a dating profile, you might think, oh, my profile is really good. But when someone looks at it and says, hey, man, like there's all these things that are not great about a profile, as hard as that is to hear, it actually helps you be better, it helps you show up better. And I think that's something I'm really embedding in there. And I've got a number of men who are interested in this already. And if you are interested, then there's a link down below with a bunch of questions. And like I said, this is not for men who are brand new to getting into this kind of deep emotional work. It's not for men who just want to dabble. This is for men who are serious in doing this, who are really committed to being better men. There's a form down below. And again, I warn you, it's a number of questions in there, right? To understand you, understand what's going on for you and what you want out of this. So fill that out, and then I'll get in contact with you and let you know if I feel that you're suitable for it. But without further ado, I'll let you jump into the episode. So I'm back with another wonderful episode. And as you've heard, we're going to be diving into the aspect of dating profiles. So many of the conversations I have with men, my own clients, and men that I meet is around this kind of struggle with dating profiles, knowing whether it's right or wrong. And I have an absolute expert here today with me to talk about this. James, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing very well. I'm excited to be on the show today.
Wicked. Thank you. Thank you for being here. A question I wondered for yourself is, you've got quite a varied history of kind of work and what you've created in the world. So I thought I'd wonder, what led you to focusing on helping men transform how they create their dating profiles?
Well, during the pandemic, I was giving a lecture on storytelling for nonprofits and charities. And I said as kind of a passing, storytelling works also for dating profiles. And I gave my own history of when I was, I initially put out kind of a weak profile without much effort. And then I really introduced storytelling. I told my parents, how they met, their 50th, and I showed a photo of their 50th wedding anniversary. And some other family photos, one of my son who was an empty nester. That's usually a positive category. And then they found that interesting. Actually, I got more questions about that than my actual talk, which was based on a TED Talk where somebody did it on an online option, somewhat like the J. Peterman catalog, if you're familiar with the Seinfeld show. And when you tell the story, it enhanced the value of the product. It sold for a lot more. And I said, you can kind of do the same thing with your dating profile. And people found it interesting. And somebody said, you should be a dating consultant. And I kind of laughed it off. But I went on some dates and I saw how bad, some of the women would show me how bad the dating profiles were. And their approach as well, dick pics, for example. I don't understand why guys send these, but they actually do. I thought that was like a freak thing, but no. And women, you ask them, they've had that, particularly younger women have had that. So a lot of guys are, they're sending the fish, the women don't really like that, but guys think they do. So a lot of men I don't think there's malice. They just really don't know what women want. And that goes to something also called empathy or just market research, just knowing what your market wants. And anybody in marketing or advertising would have that as the basis of their profile. So a dating profile is just an ad. Think of it that way. And a difficult ad too, because it's an image. It's more image than the copy, but it's a little bit of both. So that's what makes it much more difficult, say, than a resume. It's just written words. And I don't know. I've written resumes for people, and there's talent there, but it's not much difficulty there as a dating profile.
And what are some of the kind of common problems? You said some of them there, the old holding the fish, which is a real classic one. But what are some of the kind of common mistakes that you see that men make when it comes to creating and crafting their dating profile?
Well, there were three low. These are low bars that make you from mediocre to a good profile. One is to avoid selfies, and selfies are bad because they distort your face. It makes your nose 30% bigger. Now, most people don't look better with I guess there may be somebody out there. His nose is real small, maybe looks better, but most people don't. And it also makes your eyes look worse. So selfies is a one big mistake. The second is to underdress. Women have a preference. They've done studies for men that dress up. Now, there's different styles that are preferred, but underdressing, all your photos in tank tops and shirtless or T-shirts would be an error. You want at least some with a suit or a jacket. That is the easiest way to make yourself perceived as higher value. And the studies show that it's not just long-term relationships and marriage. Even for one-night stands, women prefer that. So that's an obvious one. Those are two things that I would avoid selfies. I would say get some professional photos, and something maybe a little bit deeper is photos with story appeal. One of the classic ads of David Ogilvy from your country originally was the Hathaway shirt ad. He had worked for Gallup poll, so he done some studies that showed that when somebody had an eye patch, it caught the eye. People said, well, why is he wearing that eye patch? So he did one for Hathaway shirt ad, and in the first week they sold out. it would put him on the map. So I'm not suggesting you poke your eye out and wear eye patch. I'm just saying I had a photo here. Here I was at a family wedding in Mexico, and I had a donkey biting my knee. You know what I mean? And people would ask questions. So I'm dressed in a tuxedo, but the donkey, you just nobody else probably has that. You know what I'm saying? And so you have some photos that you're like the only one, you stand out, and you want to stand out in a good way, obviously, but standing out's gives you a big edge. If you're trying to get online dating is competitive, so you're trying to stand out in a positive way.
Got it. Yeah. Being too casual, and the selfies, we got this very classic kind of like gym mirror selfies. You see a lot of the guys taking there in the gym, and they're feeling jacked up, and they take the selfie, and in the back of the picture, there's like everyone's stuff along the benches, or you see toilets and urinals. It's just not. It doesn't portray a beautiful message about who you are, and also. My take's always been is it shows you don't appreciate the fine details of the aesthetics that are around, like a lack of kind of self and spatial awareness.
Oh, I agree completely. Women care about that more. So a sense of style, it's very important. They look for that. If you're looking for, it's like I said, that's one of the easiest ways you can improve. It's not like getting a PhD, which requires a lot of effort, or other kinds of improvement. I get the gym. I mean, it's been a while, but when I was younger, I lifted weights, and I was very proud of that. But it's not something I would put on because it's generally, what you like and what women like are not necessarily the same thing. You just got to realize that. And that's why having a background in advertising was helpful. I just realized that, what does your customer want? And customers want different things. So it's not like there's one perfect way. There's different roads to Jerusalem, so to speak. Not everybody should dress the same, but I'm just saying you should put interest. You use the word style. I like that. Image, style. It's very important.
Mm-hmm. And you say customer there. And I like, because I've often said to people that a dating profile is like it's like your front window, right, of a shop. It's the first thing people see, especially the pictures. It's the first thing, and you want to entice them to kind of to go to enter the shop, to enter, right, and thinking about where you put things in relation to other things. And I know your expertise in storytelling. So I'd love to know, like, what are the kind of key elements that create a compelling story on a dating profile?
Well, I mean, I think one thing, the work for my story, and everybody's story is different. I mean, there's the self-made man is a popular one. Somebody, the immigrant. I have a friend who was one of the boat people, and he came to this country, and he has employs a lot of people. His sister was a member of Congress, I think, still. I mean, it's just a really nice thing. So the self-made man is one. There's different archetypes. My story was how my parents met. My father was just graduated from West Point, lieutenant at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. My mother lived there. And then I showed a picture of them, the 50th wedding anniversary. And the purpose of my story, there's something a little bit called sortative mating. People assume you're a little bit like your relatives, which I'm not sure is true. It's often not, but there's some truth to it, I suppose. But I wanted, the reason I showed that was also mostly because I was divorced, but over 20 years, and I was showing that I came from a family, and that's what I longed for. So it kind of conveyed, because a lot of guys are going to say, "Oh, I'm interested in a long-term relationship and marriage," and they're not. So women have been burned by that. So you have to understand, the pain points of your market. So you really want to sell it. It's not enough to say it once in passing. You must sell what you have to offer. And that's another concept. The word offer is something I would really put a lot of thought to. And there's explicit offers, there's an implicit offer. Like if you're in a sailboat, I'm going to get to go sailing with you. That's like there's different ways to convey an offer.
Got it. So the offer is almost how we for instance, when we use dating apps and there's the pictures we have, right? The pictures, the life that we live. So kind of what I'm gathering from there is like the story we tell with our pictures show what we're offering, like the life that we are enticing someone into, you know, like if you date me, this is a sort of life that you can expect to be living.
I think so. You don't have to say that explicitly. It's implied. You don't want to be like the Tinder swindler. I mean, he was a little bit crude, although it worked, obviously. That's a little bit too crude for me. And I think you don't want to write a check you can't cash. You don't want to overly attract the gold diggers. But I do think you want to, and it's more in photos than copy, though the copy is important. And I always say if you have a photo and you can put a caption that's heavily read, not all the dating apps allow that, but some Match does, and several do. I love the captions. I always read that. So your words and your photos should work hand in hand. I do think the photos they create an image and they're more powerful. You think of like one of the most famous ads of all time is the Marlboro Man. And it's an unhealthy product, not encouraging it. But I'm just saying the image created by the Marlboro Man, it's whatever the words are, come to Marlboro country. That's not it, it's his image. The Dos Equis ad is an important one for online dating. Notice how he dresses, the most interesting man in the world. So the copy does matter there, what they say, but it's how he's dressed. If he dressed in a tank top, he's an old man. It wouldn't work without how he dresses, So when I look at ads, that might help you when you create your dating profile. When you're and another thing to consider, I forgot to mention earlier, you really want to build a portfolio of photos, and it may take a while because you're not going to go to like an embassy party, every month. Might be something you do every 2 years or something, or whatever kind of like some function while you're wearing a tux. It's, probably not something you do every, maybe once a year or two. So something like that. You want to look for opportunities. I saw this donkey at that wedding. I said, oh, that's going to be a great picture. That's what I'm looking for. Something that breaks in, that stands out.
So it's using kind of the life that you are living. Like you said, if you're going to a wedding or a really nice, beautiful party, is actually remembering to take photos, because this seems to be a real issue for a lot of men I speak to, is that they don't have the history of photos of them in places because they just don't think about it when they're there. Whereas women, they have this wonderful eye of being like, they're somewhere beautiful and they hand their phone to a friend, or, women even do it voluntarily with each other. They'll be like, hey, you look beautiful and this is a beautiful setting. Stop there. Let me take some photos. But as men, we don't do this with each other. We don't just go, hey man, you look great. Let's take a few photos of you here at this party, at the woods, like by this beach or wherever.
Well, that's a big mistake. And you're going to have much better experience if you have good photos. And I say that not just how handsome you are, however, although I did put all my photos on this site called Photo Feeler, which measures them on various categories. But just the story, it just creates an image, and you'll have a much better experience. You'll have more women come to you. So it's worth the investment in time and effort to put your best foot forward.
Good. And how could a man balance the kind of authenticity of his like day-to-day life with the kind of the presentation, the aspirational nature of the profile? Because like in hearing you, what you're saying there is, it feels like your profile should, in many ways, like ads, I'm always struck by ads for cars in particular, because I notice if ads for cars, they're not really selling the car. They're selling this aspirational lifestyle of people that have the car, if that makes sense. So how do we balance this kind of aspirational nature of our profile that we're trying to kind of sell to our customer with the kind of authentic, kind of grounded day-to-day life that we are also living?
Well, that's a difficult thing. I always say you shouldn't exaggerate. And a dating profile, it's like an iceberg. You only see like 12%. So there's got to be something underneath. I also think that one of the things to make your ad more credible, if you will, is admitting something that's a weakness that's probably that doesn't matter to her. You know what I mean? To the woman you're marketing. So that's one of the things that you say. If you're going after, you like really educated women, for instance, and say, I love history. I'm not the best at fixing things. I actually put that. I took that out. I kind of equivocated on that. But I'm not the kind of guy that's build a new house addition for them. I'm just not. If that's what they're looking for, there's nothing wrong to look for that. I just want to be who I am. So I am willing to admit a flaw, particularly if it's a flaw that your market, the women you're targeting, probably don't care about that much. They're, if you're looking for somebody who writes well, that one might be, that'd be more me.
Go ahead. So it's there's a sense of kind of vulnerability and honesty that I'm hearing you say is like sharing, because this is something that, as men, I think we always kind of move away from, is like showing that we have any faults, a thought with who we are. But I'm hearing you say is like, sharing something that's really true about you that may show a certain level of kind of imperfection and like honesty in the profile. Is that to kind of make you more relatable? Is it to show that you're open to expressing like the truth about who you are, or, some other reason?
Yeah, I think it's also to increase you got to remember there's so much dishonesty in online dating. That's why on the photos, I actually like to date them. And the more specific, the better, Friday, April 15th, 2024, is more credible than 2024. Well, that might have really been years ago. Who knows? And I think admitting a flaw makes all the other things you say more honest, seem more likely to be true. And, they're going to know pretty soon. You're going to know whether the person's honest or not. Now, I don't get that concerned if a woman lies about her age 2 or 3 years. It's like I have a 3-year policy. I'm not advocating lying, but I told my real age, they're going to find it to be embarrassing that you lied about. You know what I mean? If you lie about something that's obvious, like I understand the guys that are short. It's rounding up's fine, but lying, by a huge percent, I don't get it. Because they're gonna know right away that you're dishonest. It's not a good way to begin a relationship.
Yeah, and there's a lot of dishonesty in the dating world. There's something that I hear a lot, and the one about being short. It's funny. I've had a few clients, men who are usually kind of 5'5", 5'6", and they wanting to be a bit taller, and they've lied on their profiles, and they've explained to me, the rationale behind it. And they said to me that it's better that I say I'm 5'8" and then 5'6", because when I walk in my shoes, no one's really noticing that, like, is it 1 inch? Is it 2 inches? Maybe they might be like, oh, he's a little bit smaller than I think he said, but at least I'm in the door. I'm in front of them. Like, I'm in front of them. They can feel who I am. They get an experience of me, and maybe that height thing becomes a little less important. But I've also spoke to men who have exaggerated very greatly. They're maybe 5'5", 5'6", and they've said they're like 5'9", 5'10", and that's backfired on them massively, because it's like a really obvious height difference that can't be hidden.
Yeah, most people are tolerant. They know the world's fallen, so a slight exaggeration is fine. I'm not talking rounding up. No. That's okay. Yeah. There's a big difference though. The big lie you really have to watch out for. And I remember one woman lied like 7, 8 years. I remember I thought she was younger than me. I looked at her and I said, boy, she looks older than me. And she was. But I didn't think somebody would lie 7, 8 years. I thought, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. You talked a few times about the customer and, like the sort of woman that we're trying to attract. How can a man, because, I find this is something that a lot of guys do. Probably you've seen this in the research you've done, or the men you've worked with, is that they're trying to appeal to too much of a broader, I use the word market. Like they want to appeal to all women. So like, okay, I'm wanting to, and I think that behind that is this kind of sense of not wanting to miss out, or this sense of not wanting to feel rejected. So if they appeal to a really broad kind of sense of any woman, right, then that's like, they see that as kind of a positive. But how do you see how that actually is limiting for them?
Well, I think that most marketers would say you're better off. The polarity is not bad. You're better off having a market niche, and that trying to appeal to everyone is a mistake. There's different dating apps for different kinds of women, so you want to adjust your profile accordingly just based on that. But even on, say, like a Hinge or a Match, one that has kind of a broad base, I think a little polarity is better to be polarizing in a way that, that there's a lot of women that like that. I'm not talking about being a jerk. I'm not talking about having a niche that's too small. But I don't think you should be fearful of being a little bit polarizing, particularly if there's a lot of women that skew that way. If it's something like. But you don't want to be, as much as I do think you want to appeal to women, you want to seem like a real guy too. So it's really a balance. So I see people go both extremes, so you really want some nuance there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really agree with that, actually. Like I think it's good to trying to appeal to everybody. What I see with men's profiles is become quite bland, and they're not willing to like really say who they are, which may be I think from the kind of work I do is kind of a deeper thing, is like a fear of really showing who they are in the world. So they come across as quite bland, and that comes to their profiles. But in fact, for me, it's like you're trying to, for want of a better phrase, the kind of manifestation, trying to magnetize someone who really matches with who you are and what you're looking for and what you're trying to create in your life. So having a profile that's like, I don't know, if I was when I did create dating profiles, I used to be really clear, like I'm really into sneakers. I've got a huge sneaker collection. It's like 80 plus sneakers. Like I love this particular type of music, and I love to travel to, interesting and exotic countries, for example. That would be really true for me. And when I've had conversations with men, they're like, oh yeah, but what about women who don't want to go to exotic countries? Or what about the women who aren't into that music? Aren't they going to just be a no to me straight away? And I often say to them, I'm like, well, you may want them to be a no to you straight away, or you may only want to entice the ones who are interested in that particular side of music or open to that, or they want to be more adventurous, instead of being like, I like country walks. I like going to pubs. I'm easygoing. I don't take life too seriously, which is a really kind of standard trope that men put on their profiles.
Well, women do too. There's these cliches, the one I'm really suspicious of is the hiking. So I like follow that up. And a lot of them really don't like hiking. That's what I say. So if you're going to say hiking, for instance, and I do, put the hikes you like, like where you live. I like hiking, on such and such mountain or trail. There's the Billy Goat Trail near where I live, which is kind of a little bit dangerous, actually. Not a good idea, actually, on a date. I went to a date there. She was way over her head. So be careful where you take her on a hike. It's my reputation. But if specificity, again, is trusted. So if you're going to say something like hiking, which it's virtue signaling, then be clear what you like. Like animals, I'm a bird watcher. Say I like be the more specific, the more trusted you're going to be. And I agree with you. If somebody is not, I wasted my time. I like travel and adventure. Somebody who's so boring is not a good fit. You don't want to waste your time on somebody who's not a good fit. So you want to screen. I think a lot of guys, when they make the first phone call, they're all trying to close. Let's get a date. When in fact they should be screening. You hope that the date arises from that, but you need to screen and avoid somebody who's just not a good fit. And they don't have to like the same shows as you, but they have to be open to different experiences because sometimes it's a group you're just not familiar with. If you listen to them, you might like them. Some people are open. Some people, particularly as they age, or get closed-minded, even more so. And so you want to avoid those. And then the other thing that's challenging is as you get older, is a lot of people have had bad experiences. I mean, it's one thing to have bad experiences as a child, which a lot of people have, obviously. But then they've had a lot of women and men have had bad relationships, so they're bitter. So they go into this thing bitter. So, how bitter are they? That'd be a great thing to know. But people aren't going to let you know. I'm just. Well, sometimes they will let you know. That makes it easier. I'm not. But actually, one of the worst experiences. She was a sweet girl, but her husband had died, and she's a widow, and she just was really still in mourning. And it's like, do you want to be part of that? You have to ask yourself. Really, she was like, and she said, well, whoever I marry, have to understand that he's going to be part of this relationship. So it's like, he was like he wasn't gone. I'd much prefer a woman who hated her ex. I can beat that guy.
And you were saying there, I love that. You were saying there about kind of bad experiences, and we have bad experiences in dating. And sometimes I see this on the profiles of not my clients, but the people they're kind of looking through their profiles, where people are kind of listing the things they don't want, almost kind of be quite negative. Like, what's your kind of take on that?
Oh, I think that's a great thing. Sunny disposition. You want to be positive. Thinking, I would go very low on the don'ts. I might use, I think I used mine, and it was a little bit of snobbery. I said, and it may have been unfair to somebody who's not an English speaker, but I said, I'd like a woman who knew that a lot was 2 words. It was meant to be humorous. And wasn't a member of the QAnon conspiracy or something like that. Because I went out with the QAnon, and it was a waste of time. She was a nice person, but she was just crazy. So whatever. But, it wasn't too heavy. You know what I'm saying? And most people, but I was looking for educated women. So there's a reason behind my sin. But my main point is, avoid the negativity. Really sunny, optimistic, happy. Like, you expect good things have happened to you. You're shy. You're going to bring happiness to their life. If it doesn't work out, you're going to be fine with it too. Because somebody else will find. You know what I mean? It's not like you're desperate or angry.
And no one wants to date anyone who's desperate or angry. No. There's too many profiles I see where people are kind of spewing their anger through their profile, and they don't always realize it actually really puts people off. And it's funny because as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, we've said that, have a happy and optimistic disposition, be specific about the things that you like and you're into, and don't be negative. And I can imagine that some men hear that and they're like, wow, that's quite complicated to, how do I do all those things in tandem? So I guess the question that comes to me is, what do you see as the kind of key elements of a man's life that he has to kind of highlight and express through his photos and his kind of bio?
Well, that he's successful. And I don't think that always has to be defined in a financial way. I think there's a lot of people that are overly fixated on that. I think, you can be have a social conscience, so somebody who's connected. A lot of men, particularly young men, are struggling. This is like worldwide. They're, but it actually gives an opportunity for men who want to date younger. That's probably the better. But if you show that you're successful, like you're family oriented, that you have friends, that you have causes that interest you, a social conscience, ambition, things of that sense. Sense of humor is important, but that's a tough one. It's really tough to do. It's very difficult in a dating profile to do. There are some things. I had one where a photo of me in a kayak where actually it was upside down, and I said, "Be careful, you go kayaking with me." And some women found that funny. I don't know if others would, but I had one. I took it out, but it was me. It was probably silly, but I had me playing football, American football, and I said, "Don't worry. From where I sat on the bench, it's unlikely I got a concussion." I don't know if anybody found that funny, but I tried at least. Then I took that one out. But I always try to have one that at least was funny to me, that I was making an effort to be funny, a little bit whimsical, if you will. I saw one that I thought was funny. Was a guy had like a plastic tin with a fish, and it said something like, "I hear you have to have one of these, one of these fish feathers." So you're playing on the ignorance of other guys. So, that might be one that a guy could put in something, because it would stand out. Oh, okay, this guy's in on the joke. He's aware. And women like a guy who's aware,
Yeah, because I guess humor shows that we are, like you said, like self-aware and socially aware, and we know how to tread that line of like what's inappropriate, what's appropriate, and what kind of lives on that in between place that we can kind of laugh at. And as you said, it can be a really difficult dance, because humor can be very personal to different people, and there's some things that most of us find funny, but it's also one of those things that can be polarizing as well, right? Our humor kind of will attract certain people and push certain people away.
Oh, absolutely. I believe it's obviously an important ingredient. It's often a sign of intelligence. That's why women look for that. It's so risky that I'm a little leery of just be careful that maybe they won't appreciate your humor, particularly in copy. You're not seeing your reaction, whether it's a joke. I mean, I'm just saying, be careful with it. That's all I'm saying.
Definitely. And I hear a lot from the men I speak to and some of the women I work with, was like this desire for emotional connection and to kind of feel something. Is there a way to kind of transmit through our profile, through our pictures, through our bio, like a way to emotionally connect with the sort of women that we're wanting to meet?
Well, I think getting back to our start, storytelling. Storytelling is it raises the various. There was a TED talk on this. It raises the various. I forget the exact word, but the neurons that make you happy. So when people hear stories, it makes them happier. They feel connected to you. They feel like you're a real person. So that's why I think storytelling is so powerful. Is it does create an emotional connection. It's like when you see a movie with somebody's whole life, it's a certain sadness to it. You see them young and they go through the thing. You have a connection to them. And that's why, and very few men do this. In fact, almost all the dating coaches don't have a photo over a year old. Well, that'd be crazy. How can you tell your story? Like if you were, I don't know, a firefighter 10 years ago, or you were first day you were you were a pilot, and you show the day you got your pilot's license. That might have been 10 years ago. It doesn't matter. It's part of your story. You just date it. If you date it, you're honest. And again, I get going back to you're creating an image of honesty by verifying all these things. You say, oh, this is the real person. So that also creates a connection because like I said, women have been burned. So that's empathy, kind of knowing their pain experience. But if you do storytelling and you show empathy, you're going to have a huge edge over other men.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you suggest that men kind of tell a compelling story, especially now where most men are using kind of dating apps, like Hinge, for instance, where you've got, 6 or so photos, and, you can caption the photos and you have a little bit of bio and you've got a few kind of prompts. Like how do we tell a compelling story about ourselves as men through that kind of structure?
Well, it depends what you have to work with. But I think you want photos that show your different sides of you. One, a sense of adventure. You're rock climbing or you're racing a car. One, professional success, speaking. For instance, you could have a photo of you hosting a podcast. Or I had a photo of me when I spoke at that conference. a professional photo. I had a photo of me on CNN. I think I've only been on interview TV maybe a half dozen times. Sorry, but that it creates an image. So you really like, again, the portfolio of photos. You have to build that portfolio so you can tell your story, and you have to think about what story you want to tell. And it's usually somebody, like I said, ambition, social conscience, an indication you might be kind, but not a sissy either. You know what I mean? But manly. So these things are not a contradiction. You want to put your best foot forward, basically your best story, your best who you are on a really good day, not a day after you've had too much to drink, it's a hangover or something. on your best day, or a good day anyway. That's the profile you want to have.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's like I think the now we have all these photos, and I love what you said about the kind of adventure, because all of us have got some sort of adventurous side to us. Like everybody, the listeners who listen to this, you're thinking, in some way that you're adventurous. Maybe adventure to you is a really dangerous climb, or you did something quite spontaneous. You went to move somewhere, or you went on holiday somewhere, or, whatever it is. We've all got some adventure in us, and like to bring that full through that photo. And all, like you said, all of us have had some sort of success in our lives. I love what you said about social conscience. Because that could be you at a march, that could be you at, at a, God, I was just thinking of marches and not riots, like petitions and all these sorts of things, but like showing that you are connected to people and like you're interested in people and the world and so forth, because this is, more and more, especially with the younger generation, this is something that's really important to people. And like showing that through our photos is a really vital thing.
It could be coaching kids, basketball. I was a basketball coach. That was something I had in my profile. I didn't do it now, but I'm like an election officer. I mean, that's something you could show you at election day, marking in the voters or something like that. I'm just saying there's all sorts of opportunities. You want to show you're connected, and unfortunately, a lot of people aren't connected. There's a loneliness epidemic throughout much of the world, particularly for men, young men. And show that you are not one of those people, that you have a connection. That's attractive. Just like we were talking about a car, what kind of features do you have? But more important features is the benefits. What if they dated you? What would it be like? You want to give them a sense of what kind of the dream. What kind of experience it would be.
Yeah. So the experience of, I always say to my clients, it's like you want a woman to look at your profile and be able to kind of project herself into your life, the life you've portrayed, and have her feel like that's somewhere she wants to be. That's a life that she wants to be involved in, whether that she wants to be sitting next to you on that car, or she wants to be walking alongside you on that hike, if you actually do hike, on that hike, or whatever it may be. But it generates a feeling of like, oh yeah, this would be a great life to be involved in. And I guess that my mind's kind of going to the customer, the woman that we're trying to attract. How can a man start to get clear on like the sort of woman he is trying to attract into his life with his profile?
This is something, the age is helpful in this. As I was, when I was young, I was more looking at beauty. And as I got older, I realized there were certain kind of women that got me, and others might like me for maybe they thought I was handsome or had enough money to take them out or whatever. But the kind of women that liked me, when I was in high school, I was in Model United Nations. My dad was in the military, so we were stationed in Germany with The Hague. And those women really liked me. It was different than, I like foreign-born women is what I'm trying to say through all this stuff. But women that are more cultured, have experiences, I get along better than, say, somebody, from the center of the United States who's never moved. there's a lot of people that and there's nothing wrong with people like this that don't want to travel, but they're just not for me. So if you think about who are the women that you had the best experiences with, that really you liked and they liked, not that you found attractive. I mean, I remember one time I went on this double date, and my date was more attractive, but the other person's date was so much more interesting. That's the personality I wanted, you know. So that's what I would do. Think of the kind of women that you've done best with, and who like you too, because that makes, you know, it's a two-way street, and target your profile to appeal to them. You know, put the experiences that you think they would like, and you might ask them. You know, some of the women, you know, I ran all my photos by my sister. You know, if you don't have a sister, have some friend. But you know, men are bad about what women like in photos. So you just don't want to put your photos. You don't know the vibe you're emitting. So you need to run those photos and get it and really think about the kind of women you want. Yeah, so that's a very important point. And going back to what you said originally, you're not trying to appeal to everybody. You don't really care that some blow you up. In fact, that's good, because you got to remember, a lot of women are just wasting your time. I don't know whether they're even dating. They're not even reasonable. I mean, I'll get to you a funny story. So I was talking to this one woman, and she said she'd been on 50 dates in the last 2 years. And, you know, maybe a couple second dates. Hadn't really gone anywhere. And she said, you know, I don't know if I really should date. I mean, I'd like a guy come in when I come home. So she was looking for a cat, basically. So I tell this other woman this story, and then as we're coming back from a road trip, so you kind of gather something there. She said, "Well, you know, before I met you, I went on 50 dates before I did." So there's a lot of very picky women out there. Is all I'm saying. So you want to. And the relationship didn't last much longer than that either. So you're just saying there's a lot of very picky women out there who, I don't know, are. And just as there's a lot of men that ghost women after sex. So I'm not saying one sex is better than the other. I'm just saying you need to be aware there's a lot of women that I don't know why they're even dating. So you're just going to waste your time and money on them. So you really want to screen and think about it. But it's just the cost of doing business. It's sort of like anything, you know, if in business, if you're trying to appeal to a client, you might have a meeting, you might take them out to lunch, and you don't look at it as a waste. It's it's a numbers game to some extent. You have 10 people, you make phone calls to 3 of them want to have lunch with you. You know, hear your offer, and you sign up 1 or 2. You know, that kind of thing. People in business get that. For some reason in their dating life, the same person that accepts rejection in their work life gets upset. I guess it's more personal. I don't know. But you just got to accept there's going to be some crazy women out there. There's going to be some of the time wasters. There's going to be some that just aren't good fits. I mean, it's just, but you only need one, you know, or a few, you know, if you're dating for short periods. You don't need it. Like, again, polarity is, you know, you're trying to appeal to everybody in the market. And that's one of the things. If you can make yourself seem like you're a real desirable product, it's going to be easier. It's going to be so much easier for me. Trust you. It's going to be so much easier for you, rather, if you do that.
Yeah. I often say that to my clients, actually, is, you know, you don't need to meet 1,000 women that are compatible with you. You just need to meet one, right? Yeah, you ideally want to meet a few, but you really need to just meet one to have that relationship if you want a monogamous relation that way. And I think it's easy for us to forget that and be like, none of the people I meet on dating apps want what I want, when actually the truth is just they don't meet as many. There's something else that popped into my mind as you were talking, and something I noticed in both in kind of my working with men, is that men who have studied something that's aesthetic, like whether that is architecture, whether it is photography, or they are into the arts in some way, usually, you know, especially aesthetic arts, I find that they are much, much better at crafting their like dating photos. And I think it's obvious is because they understand kind of spatial awareness and color and how those things go together, and how a photo is pleasing on the eye, and why a photo is pleasing on the eye and why a photo isn't pleasing on the eye. And I guess I'm saying that for the men there. Like, I studied photography for a year, maybe almost 10 years ago now, just because I'd been traveling and I came back and I was really interested in photography. But it really shifted how I started to look at photos. Instead of it was a photo that was like, oh, that's of Bob. That's a photo of Bob. Yeah, I can see that. Or that's a photo of that monument. I'd look at photo and be like, ooh, look how the light catches that beam on that side, or the lovely way the light bounces off someone's cheek. So I guess I'm saying to the listeners is especially the men, is learn what is pleasing in a photograph beyond just a beautiful face or a beautiful person, because that will really help you when it comes to you deciding your photos, because there's actually a science to it, really. There's a real science and mathematics to what makes a photo pleasing to us. Like, even if it's just a portrait or a picture of a monument, it's really important to learn about that.
I totally agree. The creative person has a big advantage. They've even done studies about the optimal percent of your face being in the profile. I think it's 15%. That's another reason why your selfies are so bad, because your face is bigger than that. So there's an optimal. I also did an experiment one time. I had my profile. My first one was like I was in a collared pink shirt that I just took on. I went to like a conference, and then I cut it closer so it was more like my neck. I don't know why. I just experimented, and that depressed results. And one of the comments on PhotoFeeler was too intense. So there's an optimal amount of space. There's somebody who knows photography. Again, why you want a professional to be involved in this, unless you have that skill. But even you can't take a selfie. So I absolutely agree that creative person has a big advantage in this, knowing that and having an eye for that. But I do think you can if you see the kind of photos that work best, I think you can get an eye for this. I believe people, it's sort of like me in technology. It's a little slow, but after a few times, even I catch on. I think most men could do this if they want to, if they really commit to the importance of this in their life and finding the right person for them. I think they can do it.
Mm-hmm. And so do you think it's a kind of effort thing around profiles? Like, men have this resistance to kind of really making the effort to create a good profile?
Effort, and there's a lot of ignorance too. I was reading about these dick pics. I'm fascinated because it, to me, seems like an obvious mistake. But some men think women like that. So obviously those... And others are just doing it kind of being aggressive. Like, well, if you don't like me, you don't like me on my terms. I went out with this woman who was an executive at a pharmaceutical company. She actually went out with the CEO, who after the first date sent a dick pic. And I thought, what a strange thing. It's risky if that got out that he was doing that. She's not an employee, so it's not. But still, it would be bad for his image. And maybe he thinks that appeals, but if men get that so wrong, you could imagine the smaller things that men get wrong too. About, we were joking about the fish, but there's so many other things, selfies, pictures lifting weights, in the bathroom shirtless photos. It's got to go. I don't understand that one either, but I would hope that if somebody's bothering to listen to a podcast on this, that's a good sign. So if you're just trying, there are things that I disagree with other, quote unquote experts, because most people that come into this field, they're not coming from the advertising, they're more from the psychology realm. And there's also differences between what it works for a 25-year-old and a 40-year-old. In the 20s, women are more, it's not as serious, and you probably could get away with a shorter profile. But as you age, women have more, they look at the profiles longer, and they have more things they have to check off. Now, the advantage of that is you can be weaker in a certain category, height, for instance. Because they there's somebody that wants somebody who's ambitious, who's, not in their mother's basement, a long list of things. It's more like a decathlon for us guys. That's why a profile should be longer. But I'll read some expert and they'll say, well, you don't want to write a book. Well, they don't let you write a book anyway. They're the character. There's a limit, Even Match that gives you longer, they don't let you write a book. And I would never go over like 12 photos. And that's if you're doing kind of the this is my life kind of thing. And I think you can get away with 5 or 6 photos if they're really good.
Yeah. No, it's important to, as you said, to give an idea of who we are and so forth. There are some it's as you said, like some people come from like you said yourself, from advertising, some from psychology, and there are a lot of there's building up a huge like people are now studying the psychology of online dating. There's a woman I follow on Instagram. I think her name is Dr. Fox. Nicola Fox, I think, actually. And we were talking about dick pics, actually, that's it. And she popped into my mind, and she's done podcast episodes, but I think she's got a series on Audible, actually, where she talks about this. And some of it's about control. Actually, when men send dick pics, is they want to create a control that they can create a reaction and a control. And like some of it's attention seeking. There's some other reasons, they're the ones that come to my mind. But, in the example of the CEO, it's almost like that there's a risk factor there, in sending that. It's like there's a risk that it could all go wrong, but also knowing that he has enough power that it might never all go wrong. So it is a very interesting dynamic with the dick pics, because I've always thought, why would you just send random dick pics to people on Instagram or stuff like that? But it happens a lot to people. But one of the things that I speak to a number of women, what they tell me occurs is that you get talking to a guy and the conversation is starting to go well, and it's almost as if the man misconstrues conversation going nicely and a connection being built for like a sexual chemistry being built, So maybe their mind is going in a direction that the conversation isn't, and they suddenly send this dick pic. They're like, oh, this is going really well. Maybe she must want to have sex with me, and I'm going to send my prized asset to her for her to view and her be impressed at. And actually what they've completely misattuned to is that this is just a conversation going well. It's not a conversation that's going towards maybe a sexual element and so forth.
Well, the Doc Love, who's one of the first dating gurus, and he surveyed like 2,000 women, and that was their number one complaint, is that men push for sex too early and were crude. And so if you don't do that, they give you an edge. You want to be confident to eventually make the move. But I think the more common problem is pushing for sex too early, and that's again going back to empathy and knowing the experiences of women. You shouldn't make that mistake. And certainly the first date, you shouldn't do that. And I've realized some people have sex. I know a couple that had sex first date, they got married, still married. I'm just saying all experiences are the same. But she'll send you signals of that sort. You don't need to bringing it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I think that for a lot of men, the biggest problem they're dealing with is a lack of emotional attunement and kind of awareness of both themselves and other, and being able to be in that space of, oh, I said something and they've had a reaction, and to even notice that those two things can be linked and not just be kind of in their own thoughts and feelings and emotions, to kind of be attuned to that.
Yeah, you start doing these little things incrementally, you can really create a much better experience for you. Just learning those kind of mistakes that men make, and this is the biggest complaint that why women quit online dating is they don't like the crudity of men. Mm-hmm. And I met my wife, she was in private mode. She just said it was terrible. She did Match private mode where they reach out, because she just got tired of the men when she didn't respond, just being angry. And if she did respond, they wouldn't have been any happier either. I mean, just, what do you do? So it's just a lot of angry men, and, they make it tough for the other men, that aren't angry. So, you have to be aware. It's unfair. I know why you think, well, I'm a gentleman, so it's unfair that I'm being, and in a sense it is. That's the reality. You've just got to know that because there's other jerks out there that you just have to go a little bit, the extra mile, not to be that way. Show that you're not that way.
Yeah, that's a really important point. There is, and the acceptance that there's jerks out there. There's guys who, or a friend of mine would call bad actors. There's bad actors in the game, and you're aware of those bad actors, and you're aware that you separate yourself from those people. And that doesn't mean, and I think, it doesn't mean to say you're not assertive, because that's also a really important aspect of showing up in dating. But it's just to have the empathy and the understanding of I'm not like those guys. I'm a different type of guy. And that can really stand a man in good stead if he's aware enough to know that, but also aware enough also to know that women react in kind of online dating and in dating in general because of those bad actors, and that it's not necessarily personal to them or all men. I find that also a really important thing for men to do.
There is one thing. I was talking to a guy who was part of a dating app in Britain where your friend writes it for you. I forget the name of it. And his friend had a background in advertising, and he came up with lovable rogue. And I think the more important word's lovable. But the rogue is a little bit of a badass, a character. That the women are attracted to that. They still want a guy. So I don't want to neuter guys. I just want you to be a gentleman. I still want you to be a guy. You know what I mean? So somebody, a character, people like that. Women like that. If they're attracted to men that have a little bit of a swagger, independence, maverick would be another word, but lovable. So if you kind of combine that too is what they're really looking for. They're not looking for necessarily the super safe guy. I'm not saying that but somebody with a little bit. I'm trying to mix the two a little bit, and that's a powerful combination.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's looking for someone with a bit of an edge, an edge that they can. The rough edges, the imperfections in us is one of the things that make us really attractive. Awesome, James. I think we'll wrap up there. I feel like this is I love talking about dating profiles and how we build them in dating in general. I'm sure the listeners are wondering where they can hear more of you, where they can maybe work with you or get involved in any of the literature that you've created.
Well, I wrote a book, Dating Profile for Secrets for Men, How to Attract Your Dream Girl Through Storytelling. So you could buy that. But if you just want to get something today, I have a blog on my website, datingprofilesecrets.com. And if you'd like to talk to me, you can book a session where I'll give you some advice. And, you can hire me to write your profile, for example, if that's something you want. Or, I have other advice. I have a program where I think I can find somebody in 40 days. 40 it takes around 40 days. You should be able to find somebody who's, if not a wife, certainly a long-term partner. So I think it all starts from the dating profile. But actually what I found, because I was in advertising, it's good in the profile. What I had suffered from, which we didn't talk too much, the first date or two, and screening, those kind of things. I was making the mistake of trying to make everyone a close, and again, you want to screen. So, it's you wasted time. So it is a fun journey. I'm married now, but it was a fun journey. You meet a lot of nice women, overwhelmingly positive, some negative, but that's life, So it's and I think this is a great time because unfortunately, as I was saying earlier, a lot of young men are struggling. So if you're like a 40-year-old guy, I'm 61, so 40, a great time. Get the woman who's 30 looking, for a family or something like that. A lot of women are freezing their eggs. They can't find a guy that they find suitable. Maybe they're too picky. Maybe they're not. I don't know. I mean, it's supply and demand. So try to raise your level, and I think you'll have some good experiences if you put the effort in this that you would put in anything else, like in your work or school or whatever your hobby, that kind of thing.
Definitely, man. Definitely agree with that. Well, thank you, James. Thank you for today. It's been a wonderful conversation. Something super useful. I've learned a lot about, the setting up the profile and really looking at it like an ad. I think it's a wonderful way to view it and, look at ourselves as well. And listeners, the links to all those bits and bobs are going to be in the show notes. I'll add them. You listen to this, so they're in there, down there. If you know someone that could benefit from this episode, just pass it on. Share the love, as I often say. The number of times that friends of mine have sent me podcast episodes that have been really useful to my own growth and development, and I've been indebted to them because it's a really useful thing. It's really, helps us be better, as men. The one thing, help us be better as men. And also, the more people that see my podcast and rate my podcast, the more people that get to see my podcast. And that's really just what I'm here to do, to help men improve their lives in whatever way that I can. I will let you all get on with the rest of your day. And I say thank you to James, and ciao, ciao. I want to say a big thank you for listening. It's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world, especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them, share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if, you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @theauthenticman_, or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.